Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I am incredibly excited for today's session because we're going to do something that feels a little bit, well, a little bit dangerous.
Dangerous is a good word for it.
Usually, we take a topic, AI, history, finance, whatever, and we try to build a mental model of how it works. We're all about construction. But today we're going to do a little bit of demolition work.
We are absolutely taking a sledgehammer to, I think, the very foundation of how most people think about thinking itself.
We are tackling a word that gets thrown around constantly.
Yeah.
You hear it in boardrooms, you hear it in political debates, and you definitely see it weaponized all over social media. And that word is rationality.
It's such a heavy word, isn't it? It carries so much baggage. And if I call you rational, it's like the ultimate compliment. It means you're logical, you're cool-headed, you're scientific.
You're in control.
Yes, but if I call you irrational...
That's a huge insult. It means I'm broken. My brain isn't working right.
Mm.
I'm emotional, I'm biased, I'm less than.
Exactly. But today we're basing our discussion on a text that argues that our modern sort of dictionary definition of rationality is actually, well, it's just wrong. Or at the very least, it's dangerously incomplete.
So what's the source? Where are we pulling this from?
We're exploring the intersection of risk, survival, and human behavior, specifically drawing from a chapter on this very topic in a larger work about risk and skin in the game. And the core argument here is that rationality isn't about logical purity. It's not about getting 100% on a math test.
It's about something much more primal.
It is. It's about survival.
Mm-hmm.
The text we are diving into today puts it very, very bluntly. The thesis is simple, but I think radical. Rationality is risk management, period.
Rationality is risk management. Wow. I feel like I want to put that on a billboard. But, before we get into the heavy philosophy and the math of survival, the source material starts in a place that feels completely unrelated to logic.
Yeah, it starts somewhere very familiar.
It starts in the suburbs. Specifically, it starts with swimming pools.
The great suburban status symbol. The shimmering blue rectangle in the backyard.
Right. So the source references this observation from Rory Sutherland, the advertising legend. And he points out something that, I swear, once you hear it, you can't unsee it.
Okay, ready.
If you walk into a typical middle-class backyard and you look at that beautiful pool and you ask the owner, what is the function of this object? What do they say?
They'll say, it's for swimming. Obviously, it's right there in the name. Swimming pool.
Exactly. That is the stated mission. The explicit purpose is exercise, cooling off, doing laps, having fun. But Sutherland argues, and the data actually backs him up on this, that if you measure the time people spend actually swimming versus the immense cost of installation and maintenance.
Oh, the cost per lap must be astronomical.
It's insane. It makes absolutely no economic sense if the goal is just swimming.
It's a terrible ROI on the activity of swimming.
So Sutherland's argument is that swimming is not the real function. The real function of a swimming pool is to allow the middle class to sit around in their bathing suits without looking ridiculous.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's all about context, isn't it? Think about the alternative for a second.
Okay.
Imagine it's a hot July day. You decide to go out into your backyard. You strip down to a Speedo or a bikini. You set up a lawn chair right in the middle of the grass, and you just sit there staring at the fence.
With no water around.
No water, no pool, just you, semi-naked, on the lawn.
Your neighbors are going to call the police, or at least stage an intervention.
At the very least, they'll be peering through the blinds, worried about your mental breakdown. It signals crazy person. It's a complete violation of social norms.
You dig a giant hole in the ground, you fill it with thousands of gallons of chlorinated water, and you sit next to it in the exact same outfit, doing the exact same thing, which, let's be honest, is mostly just sitting there, maybe reading a book.
And suddenly...
It's not crazy. It's leisure. It's aspirational.
It's a status symbol. It's a valid social activity. The pool legitimizes the behavior. So the real function isn't the swimming itself. It's creating a context where you can relax in a specific way without any social penalty. The stated mission is one thing. The real function is something else entirely.
And the source pivots from the pool to an even sharper analogy, one that I think hits the wallet a bit harder. New York City restaurants.
Ah, yes. This is a classic example of where the stated mission and the real function completely diverge.
We've all been there. You go to a fancy restaurant in Manhattan. You think the mission is simple. Feed me dinner. You think you're paying for the food on the plate.
You're paying for the culinary artistry, the fresh ingredients, the chef's expertise. That's the story you tell yourself.
But if you actually look at the business model, I mean, the real profit and loss statement of a high-end restaurant. The kitchen is often a loss leader.
It's incredibly expensive to run. They're sourcing these rare, expensive ingredients. They have a whole brigade of chefs, sous chefs, pastry chefs. The overhead is just massive. When they sell you that low-carb, complex truffle risotto for $50,
They're often just breaking even on it. Sometimes they're even losing money on that specific plate.
so if the food isn't making money, what is the business? What are they actually selling you?
The business is the liquid. It's the wine list. It's the cocktails. It's the $10 bottle of sparkling water.
That's where the margins are. They are overcharging you sometimes by 300 or 400% for that Tuscan wine or that single malt scotch. The food is just the bait.
The food is the very fancy, very delicious loss leader to get you in the door so they can sell you the high-margin alcohol.
Exactly. The stated mission is hospitality and culinary excellence. The real function is a liquor dispensary with really, really good snacks.
Okay, so this is fascinating, but why are we talking about pools and restaurants? We promised the listener we'd talk about rationality. Where's the connection?
Here is the connection, and it's the central pivot of this whole deep dive. We judge things by their stated mission. We look at a restaurant and we ask, is the food good? We look at a pool and ask, can I swim in it?
And when we look at human beliefs,
When we look at human beliefs, superstitions, weird cultural habits, religions, political ideologies, we judge them by their stated mission, which we automatically assume is truth.
we ask, is this belief scientifically accurate? Is it factually correct? Can you prove it in a lab?
Right. And if it's not scientifically accurate, like, say, believing in ghosts or avoiding black cats or praying for rain, we call it irrational. We dismiss it as a cognitive failure. But what if truth is just the food? What if scientific accuracy is just the bait?
And the real function of the belief is something else entirely, something hidden.
Exactly. What if the real function is survival? What if a belief exists not because it's true in a literal scientific sense, but because it keeps you and your tribe from dying?
That is the core question for this deep dive. If the stated mission of a restaurant isn't its real function, maybe the stated mission of our brain to perceive reality with perfect accuracy isn't its real function either.
We are so obsessed with whether a belief is true or false, like it's a math equation, but this text argues that's the wrong frame entirely. Rationality isn't about logical precision. It's about staying in the game.
Rationality is risk management. That's the mantra. So the promise to you, the listener, is this. By the end of this hour, we want you to understand why some things that look like total unscientific nonsense might actually be genius survival tactics honed over millennia.
And why, at the end of the day, being right is way, way more important than not dying.
So let's unpack this. We have to start at the very beginning with our own biological hardware. Let's talk about section 1, the function of perception itself.
This is a perfect place to start because it deals with our physical senses, something we take so granted. Most of us have this idea that our eyes are like, these high-definition digital cameras.
Yeah, 4K resolution live streaming reality to my brain.
We think we look at the world, the eye captures the light, transmits a perfect one-to-one image of reality to the brain, and we see what is actually physically there. We think we're objective observers.
But the source says that is biologically not what is happening at all.
Not even close. The eye is not a scientific instrument. It is not a passive sensor designed to capture the full electromagnetic spectrum. It's actually a terrible tool for that job.
It misses so much. We don't see ultraviolet light. We don't see infrared.
We don't see radiation. We don't see Wi-Fi signals pulsing through the air. The eye actively ignores a vast, vast amount of what is really out there. And the question is why? Why is our perception so limited?
Because the purpose of the eye isn't to give you a physics lesson.
Precisely. The purpose of the eye, from an evolutionary perspective, is to orient your body in space, help you find food, and most importantly, keep you from falling off a cliff or getting eaten by a predator.
So biology prioritizes the useful representation of reality over the accurate scientific one.
Absolutely. Think about an early human on the savannah. Imagine if seeing the world accurately, processing every single photon, every blade of grass, every texture, took, say, 500 milliseconds longer than just getting a quick and dirty, blurry scan of the environment.
Half a second. That doesn't sound like much.
In that half a second, the lion eats you. The game is over. Evolution does not care if you saw the lion in perfect 4K resolution with HDR. Evolution only cares if you saw a threat-shaped thing and ran away in time.
So our visual system is actually designed to distort things, to take shortcuts. if that distortion helps us survive.
Yes. And the source brings up this fantastic historical example of this principle being used intentionally by some of the most logical thinkers in history. Let's talk about the Parthenon.
The Great Temple in Athens, a symbol of order, logic, and geometric perfection.
Right. If you stand in front of the Parthenon today, it looks like this perfect, straight, rectilinear marvel. The columns look perfectly vertical, the floor looks perfectly flat.
But that's a complete lie.
It is a massive, incredibly sophisticated optical illusion. The ancient architects, and the source references the Roman architect Vitruvius here, who wrote about this, they knew about the quirks and flaws of human vision.
They understood our eyes are not reliable cameras.
They knew that if they built the columns perfectly straight and parallel, the human eye, when looking up at such a massive object from below, would perceive them as splaying outwards at the top. The building would look weak, like it was about to collapse.
So what do? They built them crooked on purpose.
They did. They tilted every single one of those massive marble columns slightly inward. They made the columns at the corners slightly thicker. They even made the floor, the stylobate, curve upwards in the middle by several inches.
They introduced physical distortions to counteract the built-in distortions of the human eye.
Precisely. The source has this great line about how the columns were designed to look like a marching Russian division, perfectly uniform and upright, and they look that way because they are physically distorted.
Vitruvius said the aim was to counteract the visual reception by a change of proportions. They were lying to the eye to tell a deeper truth to the brain.
And here is the kicker, the really important part. We don't look at the Parthenon and say, those liars, they tricked us. This building is irrational.
No, we call it architectural genius. We call it an aesthetic enhancement. We admire the cleverness of it. We accept that the lie serves a higher purpose. In this case, the experience of beauty, order, and stability.
So if we accept that ocular deception, literally, visual lying is acceptable, even necessary, for navigating the physical world or for creating art, why are we so incredibly hard on cognitive deception?
There's the bridge. If our eyes lie to us for our own good, why can't our beliefs?
That's the argument. If your eyes can lie to you to keep you safe or to make something look beautiful, maybe your brain adopts beliefs that aren't scientifically true because they serve an even more important function: survival.
The example the text uses to illustrate this is Santa Claus.
A perfect, simple example. Telling a child that Santa Claus is real is, factually speaking, a lie. It is a complete distortion of reality. There is no magical workshop at the North Pole.
But does it enhance the holiday experience for a 5-year-old? Does it create a sense of wonder and family cohesion and magic?
Absolutely it does. For most families, it's a positive experience. And crucially, what does it cost you?
Well, nothing really. A few cookies and some milk.
It's a harmless belief. The source makes a very strong claim here, a rule really. Unless a belief causes tangible harm, unless it has a real-world cost, you cannot call it irrational.
Let me repeat that because it feels important. There is no definition of rationality based on actions that bear no cost.
Think about it. If I believe that wearing my lucky pair of socks helps my favorite sports team win, that is scientifically nonsense. There is no known causal mechanism connecting my feet to the outcome of the football game.
A physicist would laugh at you.
But if wearing those socks makes me feel better, if it enhances my enjoyment of the game and it costs me nothing, and I don't, bet my life savings on the game because of the socks, is it irrational? Or is it just a harmless, decorative belief?
Decorative beliefs versus action beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I like that distinction. We're definitely going to get deeper into that later on. But first, we have to establish the hierarchy of needs here. The source lays down a maxim that really orients this entire discussion.
It's the North Star for this whole way of thinking, and it's this: survival comes first, truth, understanding, and science later.
It sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, but I feel like we forget it all the time. We think we need to understand the world perfectly in order to survive in it.
And the source completely flips that. You have to survive first in order to get the luxury of doing science. There's a great Latin expression often attributed to the philosopher Hobbes: primum vivere, deinde philosophari.
First, live, then philosophize.
You can't sit around debating the nature of truth if you've been eaten by a lion 30 seconds earlier.
Dead people don't publish papers.
Exactly. Dead people don't make investments either. And this isn't just some dust-gold philosophy. The source quotes Warren Buffett, the ultimate pragmatist. Buffett's #1 rule of investing is never lose money. His #2 rule is never forget rule #1. But the unspoken rule 0 is, to make money, you must first survive.
meaning you can't be a successful long-term investor if you go bankrupt in year one.
Right. If you take a risk that blows up your entire account, the game is over for you. You don't get to participate in the long run. And this brings us to a technical concept that the source introduces, and it is absolutely crucial for understanding this new view of rationality. The concept is ergodicity.
Okay, let's break that down. Ergodicity. It sounds like a complex physics term, but in this context, it's really about avoiding game over.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it this way. In many situations in life, if you lose, you can just play again. If I lose a hand of poker, I can buy more chips. If I get a bad haircut, my hair grows back. Those are non-ergodic situations. The past doesn't necessarily wipe out the future.
You can recover from the loss.
You can recover. But in an ergodic scenario, there's something called an absorbing barrier.
An absorbing barrier. That sounds incredibly ominous.
It is. An absorbing barrier is a state that, once you enter it, you can never, ever leave. Death is the ultimate absorbing barrier. Total financial ruin, where you are on the street and can never get back in the market, that is an absorbing barrier.
So, for a system to be ergodic in the way that benefits us, we have to avoid those barriers at all costs. It's the most important thing.
It's the only thing that matters in the long run. And this is why this connects to tail risks. Tail risks are those rare, catastrophic events that happen at the tails of the probability bell curve. The black swans.
The things that never happen until they do.
Right. And the source argues that unless you have what looks to an outsider like an overblown paranoia about these tail risks, you are not being rational. You are actually being reckless.
Because it only takes one interaction with an absorbing barrier to end everything for you?
Exactly. Let's use the classic Russian roulette analogy, which comes up all the time in this field. Imagine I offer you $1 million to play Russian roulette once. The revolver has 6 chambers, 1 bullet.
So that's a 1 in 6 chance of death, about a 16% chance I die, but an 84% chance I walk away a millionaire.
Right. Now, suppose 1,000 people play this game once each. On average, about 833 of them will walk away as millionaires. About 167 will die. If you are a statistician looking at the group average, the game seems profitable. The average outcome is positive.
But that's for the group. What if I, as an individual, play the game over and over again?
If you as an individual play that game 6 times,
statistically, I am guaranteed to be dead.
you will eventually hit the absorbing barrier. That is the fundamental difference between ensemble probability, which is what happens to a group of people at one point in time, and time probability, which is what happens to one person over time. Rationality isn't about what happens to the group average. It's about ensuring you don't hit that absorbing barrier.
The source mentions social security systems in this context, which is an interesting application.
It is. It argues that for a system like Social Security to be sustainable, it has to be ergodic. It cannot have an absorbing barrier. It only takes one catastrophic economic event, one hyperinflation, one total collapse to cause an irreversible exit from the system for millions of people. If you aren't paranoid about that one event, you aren't managing the risk properly.
So rationality isn't about maximizing your average outcome. It's about ensuring that your worst-case outcome is never 0. It's survival first.
Never 0. Survival first, truth and optimization much, much later.
This leads us to a really fascinating visual analogy in the text, something it calls the bias-variance trade-off. The source refers to figure 3, which shows 2 targets. I think we can call this the Texas sharpshooter analogy.
It's a fantastic way to visualize the concept. Imagine 2 people are shooting at a target. We'll call them shooter A and shooter B.
Okay, I'm picturing it. 2 targets side by side.
Shooter A is on the left. Now, if you look at their target, you'll see they are missing the bullseye every single time. However, all of their shots are clustered very, very tightly together, just a few inches to the left of the center.
So they are incredibly consistent, but they are consistently wrong. They have a systematic bias.
Exactly. They have a bias. Maybe their rifle sight is bent. Maybe they flinch the same way every time they pull the trigger. But the variance, the spread of the shots, is very, very low.
Okay, so that's shooter A. Now what about shooter B?
Shooter B is on the right. Their shots are all over the map. One is a perfect bullseye. Another one is on the far left edge of the target. One is way up high. Another is down in the dirt. But, and this is the key part, if you mathematically average the position of all those shots,
The average shot is smack in the middle of the bullseye.
the average is perfect. So in a pure academic sense, shooter B has no systematic bias. They are centered, but they have enormous variance. Now the crucial question is, which shooter would you rather be? Or maybe a better question is, which shooter is safer?
Well, standard science, or maybe what we'd call textbook rationality, might prefer shooter B, because on average, they are unbiased. They are technically closer to the truth, in aggregate.
But in the real world, in a high-stakes situation, shooter B is a complete disaster. Because if the outer ring of that target represents ruin, let's say that's the point where you crash the airplane or you get eaten by the bear or your company goes bankrupt.
Shooter B is going to hit that ruin state eventually because they're so unpredictable.
It's almost guaranteed. Their variance is too high. Whereas shooter A, the biased one, is actually much, much safer. They might never hit the perfect bullseye, but they also never, ever hit the dangerous outer ring. They stay away from ruin.
The source connects this directly to the concept of being anti-fragile.
Yes. The argument is that it is deeply rational to make a series of small, low-cost errors like shooter A consistently missing the bullseye by a few inches if it prevents you from ever making the massive, high-cost, irreversible error of total ruin.
So a bias can actually be a good thing. This feels so counterintuitive.
A bias can be a survival trait. This is a crucial point. If you are an early human and you have a bias to assume that every single rustle in the tall grass is a lion, you are biased. You will be technically wrong 99.9% of the time. It's almost always just the wind.
But that bias keeps you alive for the 0.1% of the time it is a lion.
Exactly. Whereas the unbiased person, the one who waits for perfect, unbiased evidence before reacting,
Gets eaten. Their variance is too high. They made one catastrophic error.
The source also points out that this logic applies to discovery and progress. It says many of the most important medical discoveries, like penicillin or chemotherapy, came from accidental errors, from something going wrong in a lab.
Right? Alexander Fleming's moldy petri dish.
If we lived in a completely error-free world, a world of zero bias, zero variance, perfect precision all the time, we wouldn't have those happy accidents. The source says, and I'm quoting here, an error-free world would have no drugs and likely no humans. We need a system that allows for small mistakes in order to avoid the big final mistake of extinction.
This completely flips the script on how we judge mistakes. We usually think any error is bad and needs to be eliminated. But here, small, consistent errors are actually the price we pay for safety and resilience.
It connects right back to the swimming pool. The error of the pool not being used for swimming is a small price to pay for the social stability and context it provides. The system works.
I love that connection. Okay, so we've established that our eyes lie, that survival is the absolute priority, and that being consistently off-center is often better than being unpredictably right. Now let's talk about the intellectual heavy hitters behind this. The source mentions 3 specific thinkers who have shaped this more pragmatic view of rationality.
Right. These are the academic anchors for this entire argument. The text identifies 3 particularly rigorous thinkers: Herb Simon, Gerd Gigerenzer, and Ken Binmore.
Let's take them one by one. Who was Herb Simon, and what was his big idea?
Herb Simon was a true polymath, a cognitive scientist, an economist, a pioneer in artificial intelligence. He won a Nobel Prize in economics, and his foundational concept was bounded rationality.
Bounded rationality. I take it that means our rationality has limits or bounds.
Exactly. Simon's core insight was that humans cannot process information like supercomputers. We can't possibly measure every single variable in the universe before making a decision. We don't have the time, the data, or the brain power.
We aren't omniscient. Our knowledge is fundamentally incomplete.
Right. So because our knowledge is bounded, we can't optimize in the way that traditional economics textbooks assume. We don't find the single best possible solution. Instead, we use shortcuts. We use heuristics or rules of thumb to navigate an uncertain world.
And the goal isn't perfect calculation or maximizing utility.
The goal, according to Simon, is simply to avoid unanticipated trouble. He coined the term satisficing.
Satisficing, a combination of satisfying and sufficing.
Yes, we look for a solution that is good enough to get the job done, good enough to survive. That's bounded rationality.
Okay, so that's Simon, who was the second thinker, Gerd Gigerenzer.
Gigerenzer is a German psychologist who took Simon's idea and expanded it into what he calls ecological rationality.
Ecological meaning?
Yeah.
It has to fit the environment.
Precisely. Gigerenzer's work is all about looking at things that appear illogical or biased on the surface, many of the cognitive biases that other psychologists love to point out, and showing how they actually make perfect sense when you look at the real-world environment, the ecology in which they are used.
So he's mapping the hidden why behind the seemingly weird behavior.
He's a major critic of what he calls textbook rationality, the kind that says, aha, you made a logic error on this paper and pencil test. Gigerenzer's response is, sure, But in the wild, that so-called error might be a fast and frugal heuristic that saves your life.
So he's all about real-world application versus abstract logic.
Exactly. And the third thinker mentioned is Ken Binmore.
What's his contribution?
Binmore is a mathematician and a game theorist. His big contribution to this discussion is his relentless focus on revealed preferences.
That's a term I hear in economics a lot. What does it mean in this context?
It's crucial. Binmore basically argues that the word rational is often used as ill-defined gibberish. People use it as a weapon to mean things I agree with or behavior that benefits me.
Right. You're being irrational usually just means you aren't doing what I want you to do.
Precisely. So Binmore says, forget all that noise. Forget what people say is rational. Forget what they claim they believe in surveys. If you want to know what someone truly values, look at their revealed preferences. Look at what they actually do, especially when it costs them something.
Actions speak louder than words.
Infinitely louder. Which leads us perfectly into the next major section of the source material. Skin in the game and the problem of cheap talk.
This feels like where the rubber really meets the road.
This is the core of the source's critique of a lot of modern social science, particularly psychology. The guiding maxim here is a bold one. Judging people by their beliefs is not scientific.
Wait a minute. Judging people by their beliefs isn't scientific. I thought that was the entire point of social science, asking people what they believe and why.
And the source argues that's a fundamental flaw. You cannot truly know what someone thinks just by asking them. For one, they might lie to you to look good. But more importantly, half the time, they don't even know what they truly think until they're forced to make a costly decision.
So words are cheap.
Beliefs are cheap talk. The text makes a huge distinction between what it calls decorative beliefs and action beliefs.
Okay, can we get a clear example of the difference between those two?
Absolutely. Let's say I'm at a dinner party and I want to sound intelligent and contrarian. I can say, I believe the stock market is overvalued and is going to crash by 50% tomorrow.
Okay, that's a statement, a belief.
But it's a decorative belief. It's just words. It costs me nothing to say it. It makes me look like I'm a deep thinker, but does it mean I really believe it?
The real test is, did you sell all your stocks this afternoon?
That is the test. That is the only test that matters. If I didn't sell my stocks, if my retirement account is still fully invested, then I don't really believe a crash is imminent. My action, or in this case my inaction, reveals my true preference. My skin in the game tells the truth, while my mouth might just be making noise.
The source mentions Paul Samuelson, the famous economist, and this idea of Semitic gods, which I assume refers to the ancient tradition of judging people not by their spoken faith, but by their costly sacrifices.
Right. The idea that you prove your faith through action and sacrifice, not just through eloquent prayer. And the source gets pretty spicy here, directly critiquing psychologists and behavioral economists who bloviate about human rationality based on surveys and questionnaires filled out by college sophomores for course credit.
Yeah, the text says they completely ignore the absolute requirement of skin in the game. There's no cost to the person answering the survey.
If you ask someone in a lab, in theory, would you pay $100 to save a penguin? They might say yes, because it makes them look like a virtuous, caring person. But if you actually ask them to open their wallet and hand over the $100 right now,
You might get a very different answer.
the result is often very, very different. So the true metric of belief, and therefore of rationality, isn't what you say in a survey. It's what you are willing to pay for. It's the risks you are willing to take.
How much you truly believe in something is manifested only by what you are willing to risk for it. That's the golden rule here, isn't it?
It is the filter through which all beliefs should be viewed.
So if we apply this to the bigger picture, if I have a superstition, but I am willing to consistently inconvenience myself for it or pay a cost to adhere to it, then that superstition is a real functional belief for me. And if it also keeps me safe.
Then by this definition, it's rational. Which brings us to one of the most controversial but I think fascinating parts of this deep dive, the reframing of religion and superstition.
Right. Because usually when people talk about rationality, they position it as the direct opposite of religion. It's always science versus faith, logic versus belief.
And the source completely rejects that entire dichotomy as a category error. It says you have to stop looking at religion as epistemic belief, meaning you have to stop judging it based on whether its stories are literal scientific truth.
So don't get bogged down in a debate about whether the world was literally created in 6 days or whether Jonah was literally swallowed by a whale.
Exactly. That's judging the stated mission. Instead, the source urges us to look at religion as a practical mechanism for tail risk management.
Tail risk management. That's a term from finance and statistics. How on earth does religion manage financial or existential risk?
By providing simple, binary, unconditional rules. Do not do X, always do Y, never eat Z. These rules are easy to teach, easy to enforce, and they persist across generations without needing complex scientific explanations. They become embedded in the culture.
And the argument is that these ancient rules often have a hidden survival value. The source uses a fantastic example from the work of Jared Diamond in Papua New Guinea.
This is the famous dead trees example. Jared Diamond, when he was doing his field work, observed that the tribesmen in Papua New Guinea had a very strong taboo. They would absolutely refuse to sleep under large, dead trees.
Okay. And if you ask them why, what did they say?
They wouldn't give you a probabilistic analysis of wood rot and wind shear. They would say something like, it's bad luck, or that there are evil spirits that live in the dead trees.
So a modern rational scientist might look at that and say, that's completely irrational. There are no such things as tree spirits. These people are primitive and superstitious.
Exactly. That's the naive stated mission analysis. But what is the function of the belief? What does it do?
Well, dead trees fall down.
Dead trees fall down. If you sleep under a dead tree every night for your entire life, there is a small but non-zero chance that one night it will fall on you and kill you in your sleep.
It's a classic tail risk, a low probability, high impact event.
It's a perfect tail risk. And because you sleep every night, if you make a habit of sleeping under dead trees for 30 years, that small daily risk accumulates into a significant lifetime risk. The superstition about evil spirits is a simple, robust heuristic that prevents you from taking that risk.
So the spirit is just a memorable, easy to transmit metaphor for a non-zero probability of being crushed to death.
Precisely. And the source argues that it doesn't matter why you don't sleep under the tree. It doesn't matter if you believe it's because of evil spirits or because you've calculated the physics of rotting wood. As long as you don't do it, you survive. The outcome is the same.
The rationality is in the action, not in the explanation.
That is the key takeaway for this entire section, and this is where the source takes a pretty direct swing at the nudgers.
The nudgers. You're talking about the behavioral economists, right?
Yeah. Yes, people like Cass Sunstein and Richard Thaler, who wrote the famous book Nudge, their whole project is about identifying human cognitive biases, things like loss aversion or status quo bias, and then designing systems that nudge people toward what they, the experts, consider to be more rational behavior.
But the source says these regulators often don't understand probability and risk correctly.
The accusation is that they try to disrupt what the text calls efficient organic paranoias. They might look at the Papua New Guinea tribesmen and say, look, the probability of this specific tree falling on you tonight is only 0.001%. You are being irrational by avoiding it. We're going to nudge you to sleep here because it's the most efficient campsite.
And then the tree falls.
And the regulator who designed the nudge isn't the one sleeping underneath it. They have no skin in the game. They pay no price for being wrong.
Wow. So these things we call biases might actually be time-tested ancestral wisdom packaged in a way that our brains can easily remember and stick to.
Which leads us to the ultimate judge of rationality. If it's not a scientist in a lab with a clipboard, and it's not a behavioral economist in a government office, who gets to decide what is rational and what isn't?
Time.
Time. This is the Lindy effect.
We've touched on the Lindy effect in previous deep dives, but let's define it clearly in this specific context of rationality.
The Lindy effect, in a nutshell, says that for non-perishable things like ideas, technologies, books, recipes, cultural practices, their future life expectancy is proportional to their current age.
So if a book has been in print for 50 years, you can bet it will probably be in print for another 50. If a philosophical idea has been around for 2,000 years, it will likely be around for another 2,000.
Exactly. Time acts as a filter. It is the grand master statistician. The logic is simple and brutal. Rationality is that which survives. Anything that hinders survival is, by definition, irrational. If a belief or a custom was truly harmful to survival, the population that held it would have gone extinct long ago.
Evolution is a ruthless editor. It edits out the bad ideas by editing out the people who hold them.
It's grim, but it's true. So when we look at ancient traditions that have survived for millennia, we shouldn't ask, are they scientifically logical? We should ask, what survival function did they serve? We should look at the survival of the populations that follow them.
The source uses the case study of kosher laws, or kashrut, in Judaism, as a perfect example.
It is. Judaism has this set of very ancient and very strict dietary laws.
Mm.
No pork, no shellfish, don't mix meat and dairy, you need separate sinks, separate dishes.
And for centuries, people have tried to find the scientific reason for this. The classic one is, oh, they banned pork because pigs in the ancient world carried trichinosis and they didn't have modern refrigeration.
Right. And maybe that was part of the original reason, who knows? But the source argues that the specific hygiene explanation is probably secondary. The real lasting function might be something totally different and much more important.
Community cohesion.
Exactly. Eating is one of the most fundamental social acts. If your group has a strict and unique set of dietary laws, it becomes very difficult to eat with outsiders. It naturally forces you to eat with your own community. As the saying goes, people who eat together hang together.
It creates what the text calls a convex heuristic for bonding. Strengthens the in-group ties.
It strengthens the network. It builds trust, which is essential for commercial transactions. If I'm an ancient Jewish merchant and I meet you in a foreign city, and I know you also follow these strict, costly laws, I instantly know something important about your discipline and your commitment to our shared group. I can trust you more easily.
And the proof is in the pudding. Or I guess in the kosher brisket. The Jewish people have survived for thousands of years, often as a minority group facing massive hostility and displacement.
They have survived. Therefore, the customs that held them together are, by the Lindy definition, rational. Even if banning shrimp seems irrational to a modern nutritionist, it was hyper-rational for the long-term survival of the culture.
The laws survived because the population survived. That is such a powerful and humbling shift in perspective. It stops us from being so arrogant about our modern scientific viewpoint.
It forces us to be humble before history. Just because we can't immediately understand the reason why a tradition exists doesn't mean it serves no purpose. Our understanding is not the final arbiter. Survival is.
This brings us to the final major section of the text, the crucial distinction between science and scientism.
This is a really important distinction because the source is not anti-science at all. Far from it. It's pro-science, but it's deeply anti-scientism.
Okay, so what is the difference between the two?
True science is a rigorous process of discovery. It's humble, it admits its own incompleteness. A real scientist is constantly saying, I don't know, or this only applies in this very specific context, or more research is needed.
And scientism.
Scientism is using the language and aesthetics of science to sell products or ideas outside of their strictly bounded domains of validity. It's wearing the lab coat without doing the rigorous work.
It's the guy in the lab coat in the toothpaste commercial telling you this product is clinically proven to make you happy.
Or it's the policymaker using a simplified economic model that works in a textbook to try and redesign a complex, messy society. The source uses figure 4 to illustrate this. It describes the large world versus small world problem.
The small world is the laboratory, the casino.
Yes. The small world is neat, defined, linear. The rules are known. We have all the data. We can calculate the probabilities precisely. That is where textbook rationality lives and works perfectly.
And the large world.
The large world is the real world. It's a tangled, chaotic mess. It's opaque, complex, and nonlinear. We don't have all the data. Things are interconnected in ways we can't possibly see.
And the big warning here is that it is profoundly unscientific to take the simple tools and models from the small world and apply them with arrogance and certainty to the problems of the large world.
Exactly. It's a dangerous category error. It creates a false sense of certainty, and it exposes us to those massive tail risks we talked about earlier.
So true rationality, true science, acknowledges the mess. It acknowledges that we don't know everything. And because we don't know everything, we should probably have some respect for the things that have worked for survival in the past, even if we don't fully understand them.
Rationality is humility. It's respecting the complexity of the real world and prioritizing survival over looking smart in a classroom.
So let's bring all of this home. We've covered a lot of ground here, from swimming pools and the Parthenon to biased sharpshooters, New Guinea tribesmen, and kosher laws. What is the big unifying takeaway for the listener?
I think it comes back to that one sentence from the beginning, the core definition. Rationality is risk management, period, full stop.
It is not about logical purity.
No, it is not about being able to verbally explain why you do something in a way that would satisfy a philosophy professor.
It is about avoiding ruin. It's about not hitting that absorbing barrier.
It is about ensuring that you, your family, your ideas, and your community are still here tomorrow and next year and in the next century. Everything else is secondary.
It really makes me think about all the times I've dismissed something as an old wives' tale or just a silly superstition.
We should all probably be a little more careful with that kind of dismissal, a little more humble.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to take away from this deep dive. And it's the concept of grandmother's wisdom.
Your grandmother or great-grandmother probably had a lot of sayings. Things like, better safe than sorry. A stitch in time saves nine. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
She didn't have a peer-reviewed, double-blind, randomized controlled trial to back up those statements.
She didn't need one. She had something much more powerful. Thousands of years of accumulated distilled ancestral survival backing her up. She was the endpoint of a very, very long chain of people who, for whatever reason, didn't die. Her wisdom is Lindy-proof.
So the challenge for you, the listener, is this. The next time you encounter a superstition or you see a bizarre cultural habit that looks irrational or biased on the surface, don't just mock it. Stop for a second and ask yourself a different question.
Ask yourself, is this actually a hidden survival tool that has been tested by time? Is this a clever heuristic for managing a risk that we just haven't figured out how to measure yet?
Is this the bent column that makes the whole building stand up straight?
I love that. That's the question.
A perfect place to end. Thank you for diving deep with us today. This is one of those topics that I think really changes how you look at the world.
It definitely changes how I look at swimming pools and fancy restaurants.
Chuckles. Absolutely. Until next time, stay rational in the truest sense of the word. Stay safe and keep diving.
Yeah, see you next time.